So, recording in progress. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I guess welcome to our next episode here. Episode number two between Rich and Julian. Um, yeah, we just had like Rich and I had a really glorious conversation at the last Micro Solidarity summer camp, and we were just, I guess, both quite keen to continue this.
Hmm.
So yeah, here we are, sitting in
Hello.
our virtual Zoom lounge, and yeah, I don't have a tea, but yeah, happy to be here.
What's been on your mind, dude? I know you've been busy with a bunch of different stuff. What were you most curious about at the
Mm,
moment?
um, yeah, I guess the yeah, maybe I will start right in. So
Hmm.
one of the main projects which I've been working on is essentially how to combine AI safety with philanthropy. So essentially coming from this perspective of the way how AI can become safe is not
Hmm.
through regulations, not like we talked about this last time, not through taboos, not through more
Yeah.
rules, but instead through, yeah, assisting the humans in humaning well, pretty much. And yeah, I've been working like a bit, especially first of all on just formulating the vision. So this vision which I created there is called Hermes Loom. So coming from the mythological background of yeah, on the one hand Hermes as the god of communication and yeah, walking between worlds, and on the other hand the loom as a tool which yeah, essentially threads fates together. And yeah, sort of starting with this one thing which I've already been quite into, and tomorrow I will actually have a call with another developer from the UK. So essentially, like scraping all public, non-profit funding projects that are out there. So the vision is kind of to just assemble a directory of all existing funding opportunities. So it's not about creating another fundraising platform, but instead looking at all foundations and government programs and so on, because there's so much yeah, money out there which people actually do want to use for good purposes. But I just see so often how this money is not reaching the kinds of people that could actually need it and that could actually, yeah, make a, in my opinion, at least, a systemically relevant bump into what humanity needs.
Hmm.
So this on the one hand, which I called, like I've been delving quite deeply into the lyricism, I called the thread of wealth. And then the other is, of course, like once money is involved, there's always disagreement. And this is, yeah, where I started, yeah, also during our last call, or like during my last call with Nikki, and also introduced that to him of like, yeah, based on a project which he also co-led, What We Agree On. So there's this platform called Polis, which yeah, he also has some experiences with, and yeah, where we just think that this platform can really be supercharged with LLMs. Of like clustering very diverse opinion spectrums, and I've even seen a paper from the makers of Polis on this recently, of using LLMs. And yeah, I think this is really the first big step. On the one hand, the funding itself, and then once the projects are going, a tool which can really yeah, handle big opinion spectrums and can help decision makers so much more in making genuinely democratic decisions. So yeah, this is kind of the starting point, and I'm currently thinking a lot about like different possible cooperation partners and organizations to yeah, drive this forward to actually like because I don't want to be someone who just creates websites. I think I can use words fairly well, but I also want to go into action, and I'm really, really excited about everything that's coming.
Mm. You make good websites, don't get me wrong. But I hear what you're saying, like just backing that up with action is much more compelling.
Mm,
Um, the the thread of wealth, this idea of scraping all the publicly available information and making it much more accessible for people. Um, I'm assuming this means that you have a natural language interface where you can say, I'm doing this kind of thing. What opportunities are there? Or vice versa.
mm,
Like, what these are some general cloud of ideas that I might have, but which ones of these are fundable? Which ones do I have the best chance of getting funded for? That to me just seems obviously like a good thing. Like it just feels very natural that that needs to exist.
mm,
Um, yeah, so I wanted to think a bit about that before following the Polis train of thought. I've got
mm,
some thoughts about that one too, but the funding one, the wealth one, um, I guess the first question I had is like how much experience do you have in this field? Like how much have you had to deal with the funding side of things? Like have you gone through the process and do you know the friction points internally, or is
mm.
this someone that's sitting on the outside going like, oh, it'd be nice if, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think like mostly this also came from like on the one hand, like as mentioned, I co-founded this startup. Actually, I think I had the first calls with my co-founder about like 5 years ago, pretty much around this time. And yeah, so in this startup, it essentially has to do with like dividend investing and optimizing international taxes for dividends. So the one associated term is called withholding tax reclaims. And if anyone listening to this understands what this means and also listens to this, it would be quite interesting. Yeah, so essentially, that we are developing a platform, like a web-based platform, which guides users step by step through this yeah, tax reclaim process. So essentially, over these few years, I've gained so much experience, first of all, in digitizing bureaucracy, in talking to like international tax authorities, like from so many different countries. It's quite interesting to have like every once in a while, like calls with the people from Belgium or Denmark or Spain or yeah, whatever, the Germans, the Swiss, of course, a lot also, the Austrians, and yeah, so. And then, of course, also delving really deeply, on the one hand, into the taxing side of things and really understanding, first of all, how governments work, and sort of realizing more and more, especially in continental Europe, like people that work for the government are like computers. So this is also why so often like they're just following laws. It's pretty quite simple. It's like their purpose, and it's also what they normally do. So this also means that if you know the laws really well, that you can get
Mm,
along in this environment also pretty well. And yeah, it's so this is something where I know that many people have like quite a lot of like anxiety around bureaucracy and finance in general. And for me, it's like the opposite. So just and then of course, like over time, also the very diverse kind of range of customers, which I also then noticed how, so in the beginning, we started off as a pure B2C platform. So, like as a web-based platform for private people. So, by now, we also have a web-based platform, which we also launched in 2021, which has about 10,000 customers, primarily in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. And yeah, so this is what we started with. And at some point, we noticed, of course, beyond the private people, also many others, like more institutional clients, also have a lot of interest in that. So over time, we also gained so much experience in sort of cooperating directly with real tax advisors or these kinds of wealth managers. And then, of course, and this is the stage which we're in right now, that we are making like really high profile sort of institutional bank clients, so that we've created like, I'm not sure how publicly I can say that, but essentially there's a large red French bank, and yeah, we just do the reclaim business for them. And then getting in touch with people like the richest people from Germany and from Luxembourg and Switzerland. And yeah, it's definitely when you get into this, and then sort of also immersing yourself into this culture a little bit of like, what kinds of webinars, what kinds of magazines do these people read, what kinds of opinions do they have, how do they make their decisions, and so on. So this was the one thing where I really deeply understood, in some way, the relentless efficiency of the financial markets. This is definitely pretty clear. Of like, it is relentless. And on the other hand, then at some point we got in touch with the Association of German Foundations. So essentially in Germany, there are, I think, about 30,000 registered foundations. And there's one association, Bundesverband Deutscher Stiftungen, which is essentially, yeah, the interest group of all foundations. And yeah. And then initially we got in contact with this association because we also just want to sell our tax reclaim software to all the foundations. Because of course the foundations also, of many of them, have foreign stocks. So of course they're also, and they get dividends. So of course they're also into this tax reclaim issue. So then we started cooperating with this association. And then I also, at some point, and it was in May this year, I went to the Day of German Foundations. And so essentially like quite a big event in like quite a fancy hotel in Hanover. And yeah, me also in a suit. Like normally I wear these kinds of very colorful shirts, but there, of course, I can also blend in. And I always call the suit the armor of capitalism. And and yeah, then sort of just seeing the different kinds of yeah, presentations these people are also holding. And there are, of course, like super many people who are leading these foundations, which have incredibly good intentions. And then at the same time, some of the things they're saying is like, there's not enough connection between the foundations. The foundations would like to do larger and more extensive projects, but there's just no platform to connect them. Or for some foundations, even, that they don't have enough good projects to fund. And this is then, of course, like, yeah, if it makes sense that it is this way, because normally the people that lead such a foundation, they're not like, yeah, it's not meant in a bad way, but they're normally not the kinds of people who also go to these events like Micro Solidarity or whatever. And this is just where I've been noticing of like, we in our groups here, like in our little bubble here, we have so many ideas which I think are genuinely good for all of the population. And yeah, this is just where I think when connecting these people, especially from these more conservative funding realms, to the ideas which people like us are having, of like people that are genuinely motivated, which think in a holistic way, which really want to make this work, which consider like so many different viewpoints at the same time and don't just do their cluster thinking, then yeah, I just sort of see so many synergies there. So this is then like the initial prototype which I built. Like for me, I pretty much speak JavaScript, so like I can set up like a simple platform with like front end, back end database, and cloud hosting and stuff like that in like half an hour or so. So this is pretty easy for me to do the prototype. And then I just built this prototype, and initially, like that was actually during the Micro Solidarity event where I wrote the scraper for all the German foundations. And at some point, I just let my laptop stand somewhere, and it was scraping. And then at some point, I had all the data. And yeah, then I essentially just sort of set up the platform in this way. What you also mentioned before, like my vision for this entire thing is that it's like super trivial to use. Of like everybody who has any kind of idea can first of all is just because the main problem is not the lack of ideas and not even necessarily that ideas would be pushed down or so, but instead that people don't like are not encouraged to have these ideas at all. So essentially, this entire thing around like positive psychology, learned helplessness, and so on, which I think is so important to overcome. And I'm just seeing that there are so many awesome projects. Like I'm also quite deeply involved in the burner scene, and there are so many people. Like, of course, a burn is always like a closed space and decommodification. That's all good. But of course, many of these people also want to bring these ideas into the rest of their life, and not see a burn like a closed container, but like make the life the burn. And this is something where many people, which I've seen, like back when I lived in Stockholm, also, it's like so many people have so many great ideas, want to, and in my opinion, also have plans for these ideas, how to actually realize them. That, like, at least from my experience, which would actually work, which are like decentralized and not like that one person would want to control everything, but where it's just the idea, the technique that's being taught to others. And yeah, this is like speaking in startup terms. I've written so many business plans, I've held so many startup pitches. It's all about scalability. And the main thing, which in my opinion, the traditional startup culture is always missing, is that scalability can of course be achieved with like centralized management and like a very small group of shareholders, but then it's super difficult. And instead, when we start decentralizing things and just sort of detaching from our egos at least a little bit, that then sort of the ideas that are good for is in that way myself. Like I also have some ideas which I want to fund through the thread of wealth. So of course, like first of all, I'm building this platform so that everybody can use it. And in the end, like once it's running, I will also use it myself. And then it's like the next stage of the projects which I will personally be working on.
Mm.
So it's kind of this thing like first of all make something available to the entire world and then also profit of it for by yourself. And this is kind of my approach of that. Just yeah, because I see like many things in the financial markets just because people are competitors are so inefficient and it's so unnecessary. It's just like people wanting to be richer than other people, and then sort of two different, like I'm also seeing that with my startup, like there are several companies which pretty much do exactly the same thing,
Mm.
and then of course like we have some features which are better than them and then they have other features which are better than us. And like in the end, this is also something where right now we are still in the stage of a pretty typical company. But when I apply all these experiences to like how projects actually work and how people are actually motivated, it's yeah, it's definitely not through centralized ownership, but instead it's through the joy of the process itself. And this is something which like the style how I want to work, and yeah, how I also want to encourage other people to work among themselves but also with me.
Mm. It's basically how I've been working for the last
Mm.
13 years or something.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and I've found this, yeah, like a way of working that prioritizes the intrinsic motivation, that prioritizes a sense of meaning and purpose over any kind of extrinsic objective, like, yeah, are we maximizing profit or is there some kind of I don't know, I just don't have that very competitive urge in me or that desire to like uh make money for its own sake or whatever game that other people might be playing doesn't appeal to me. But
Mm.
in the process of like, I guess I feel like I have you described like these rooms with everyone wearing a suit, for example. I've just taken a detour in life and just left
Mm.
that off. That's not an option. It feels like it's not an option to me to
Mm.
go into those rooms. Like I just um simple things like I'm not on LinkedIn. You know what I mean? Like
Mm. Mm.
I just don't I don't know how and I'm not interested in playing in a well, yeah, I think it's fair to call like a conventional world or something. Like it doesn't,
Mm,
I don't feel like I understand how to connect with people there, and I don't think that when I say I don't know how to connect, I think it's a bilateral thing. Like I don't know how to connect with their motivations, and I don't think they really know how to understand what I'm doing.
mm,
And since I took this detour in life and just said, well, I'm going to go on this unconventional track, I've found a lot of people out there who are extremely interesting and delightful and creative and positive, and it's a satisfying life.
mm.
But but it also means that I'm cut off from sources of funding.
Yeah. Mm,
Um, and now we've just reached this point where we're like, okay, I mean, the next stage of the micro solidarity network seems pretty obvious. We need to have a venue. Like we're it's like the quality of the venue is so essential to any event that we do, and we're constantly like running around from place to place renting a different venue. Like sooner or later, we're going to need our own place, and we need to optimize it, and that becomes like the central campus for micro solidarity as a community building framework. Okay, so I need to get a bunch of money together to be able to buy a venue. How are we going to do that? And I'm going through this process of writing up a business plan and saying, trying to do two jobs. One job is this is how we know that the business makes sense in just pure financial terms. And that side's okay. That side's okay. It's like we've done a lot of events, we've got a track record. We just say it's like this, but more. Um, but then there's this other piece, which is to say, this is why it's important. And I feel like I know people in my immediate circle who are unconventional enough that we speak the same language and they have access to wealth, and so they can be funders.
mm,
But I don't know if I know enough people in that circle. And then I know there's this much larger circle outside of it, which has got much more wealth and much less shared language. And there needs to
mm,
be this like translation process to say like, um, even like really simple things like I have a habit of, um, I mostly don't reference scientific papers in my work, for example. I think so much of the sociology and anthropology that like could be relevant to my work, I just think is not very trustworthy science. And I just think a lot, like all kinds of neuroscience and yeah, all these social sciences, I think a lot of them are publishing papers that to me are not going to stand the test of time. But if you want to sound credible, it's good to quote all these scientific papers and have all of these charts and these numbers
mm,
and quantify and go, "Brrr, we're gonna, I don't want to play that game because it doesn't actually feel true to me. It doesn't actually have the ring of truth. Um, but it seems necessary to do, yeah, like I say, some kind of translation. Like there's some kind of way of making legible the stuff that's most important to me.
mm,
And that bit, yeah, I wonder if it's just a question of, oh yeah, we need to scrape the data and put it together in a more accessible format. And then I would just find like, oh, there's already 30 foundations that already understand what I'm talking about, and I just need to go and have a direct conversation with them. Or is it actually there's 500 foundations, but they're one step removed and they need to go through a translation process. And that's the bit that I really stumble on and say,
mm, yeah.
I kind of freak out in a way. I'm just like,
Mm.
uh, ha-
Mm. Yeah, that's so interesting because that's exactly the part which I'm personally actually really, really excited about.
Mm,
Because I feel like exactly what you say, this translation, not necessarily across languages, but across essentially social backgrounds.
yeah,
That is like one of the most important things, yeah, overall, pretty much, because nowadays, like sort of translations between languages are pretty much like figured out. People can learn
mm,
languages and people
mm,
have automatic translators and stuff like that. So like languages are not really the main source of misunderstanding anymore, but it's the social background. And yeah, I think this is exactly the thing where I'm also yeah, of course, like when I'm talking to someone on some sort of authority on the phone, of course I'm talking very differently than I'm talking to you. And this is exactly this, like also why I chose this kind of loom metaphor of like weaving different threads of like whatever fate or consciousness or so, and just sort of weaving them together through the right language.
Mm,
and that it can be essentially the exact same idea. Just like recently, for example, I've also had different kinds of conversations with my parents about these kinds of things, and it's incredibly insightful to notice how some of the terms which I use in their like in their minds had totally different connotations. And if you use the word community, for example, or in German, essentially commune, like
mm,
Kommune.
mm,
This kind of word for someone like who grew up in the 70s, 80s or so can have like a radically different meaning. And also, like, unfortunately, sometimes quite a negative meaning. And this is then, of course, something quite unfortunate, where we mean one thing, where I think we also agree that the things that, for example, micro solidarity is standing for, it's not like it's good for some people and it's completely terrible for other people. But it's like it's good for the human. Like
yeah.
it's human well-being on the very basic level. And yeah, I think the most important thing really is translating between well-being. And yeah, it's this is the biggest task which I also see for exactly this platform. Of like you can enter your yeah information in any kind of yeah way you want, and then depending on which kinds of groups you would want this project to fund, like which seems suitable, then also that first of all the platform asks you the right questions, like which sort of knowledge do you even need to have to be kind of credible to them, or of course like to just rephrase the idea in a different way, or even
Mm,
to have like to learn this language of the others, because of course often it's I also see that so often in the burner community, for example, where it's like people just see this as a completely parallel world, which is of course also very much necessary. Like it's completely awesome to just go to a burn and just like live a radically different life from everyday life. So it's very much necessary to have this yeah protected container in a way. But yeah, to me this is just the incubator, and
mm,
I yeah see that this kind of life, like everybody deserves this kind of life, not necessarily in the form of a burn. Like not everybody has to go to a burn, but just this life of acceptance, of well-being, of understanding and being understood. Like this is something which everybody, no matter how much or what this person has done or what the background of this is, I personally think everybody deserves understanding, and this is the only way. Like otherwise, like we will just continue having wars. Like yeah.
I mean, I completely agree with that, and it feels natural to me. And I also think that we, like for example, people in the microsolidarity network, many people within the burner scene, like we actually know something about how to achieve that outcome. Um, that we've done enough, we have enough experience with like organizing groups that we know how to, yeah, create the social context where people are likely to feel understood, to feel like they belong, to feel like they matter. Like we can watch people go through the process of having their agency get activated and then their well-being increase and their resilience and everything. Like there's a lot of us people know how to do that. Um, but the thing that I have this big doubt about is like, can we really convince funders that we know how to do that? Because as soon as I try and put it into words, it seems so, I don't know, somehow vague or like grandiose or unbelievable or I don't know. It's like shouldn't isn't that what religion does or isn't that like what I don't
I
who am
mean,
I to
in the
say
end, yeah, I
that?
guess in some way this is like I often see these things because it's a really interesting overlap, in my opinion, between belief and yeah, religion pretty much, and the startup culture, just in like very small pockets, because the definition of a startup in the beginning is that it's starting up, like it's just having an idea, it's having nothing else, it just has the idea. And like with my startup, we didn't go through the normal venture capital process, but like especially if you do get like typical venture capitalists, you just play a game of convincing them. So it's like this is what every kind of pitching coach or so will tell you. Of course, the idea can be as good as you want, but if the tone of your voice is not convincing, then yeah,
Mm.
you don't have any chance. So that yeah, there's really a lot of overlap with like belief itself. And just sort of believing in the idea. And then, of course, the question is what I've also been thinking a lot about of like what are like I don't know if you know the term KPIs, key performance indicators. Yeah, exactly. So essentially numbers to measure success. Like this is of course the foundation of capitalism of like you have numbers and if number is big then good and if number is small then bad. And so this is something which I've been thinking about like essentially this very paradoxical question of how to measure well-being and how to
Mm.
quantify well-being. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure yet. Like, this is definitely something which, yeah, because of course, like I only know the capitalist version of entrepreneurial endeavors, kind of. So yeah, whether this might actually be something, especially for funders which are really detached from their project, which just sort of put their money into something and then they want to read an executive summary every once in a while. And if that's looking good, then they're happy.
Yeah.
So essentially, how to break this down in this level of like, yeah, sort of somehow appealing to the conscientious, conscience, yeah, of someone, but at the same time, yeah, still at least in the very beginning, like always giving this pointer to like you can also think about more than just money, but still like if the person is still there that they only do want to think about money, that yeah, this is exactly the kind of messaging which I'm also quite fascinated about, like how to approach such people and how to yeah and make understand those people and yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I was just chuckling to myself because the only time we talk about KPIs, me and Natty have this joke that our main KPI is like how many people are crying during the workshop.
Yeah.
See, when when someone's really moved, that's like, okay, something's happening. You can see that you've um affected something at a profound level when their tears are coming up to their eyes. But it's like
Mm.
I don't want to put that into a spreadsheet. And this is the issue for me. I know that both like bureaucracies and um yeah, businesses, corporations, pe people, institutions, people want the quantified, categorized spreadsheet.
Mm.
Um, I know that's how to. It's kind of it's a hyper efficient way of conveying meaning, right? Like you said, I want to be looking at an executive summary once a year and just scan across the thing and say, oh yes, 13% growth in KPI A, 25% growth in KPI B, and I'm happy. And it's just say, oh,
Mm.
I'm doing my due diligence. I understand that that's how it works, but this is where I honestly feel like I'm a bit immature, maybe, or like I have this teenage dimension to myself. I'm just like, I can't. I have a fundamental opposition to this desire to quantify things.
I think it's the
Something
opposite of immature.
maybe so. But I think there's a lot of people that manage to have similar values to me, but are not so tripped up by them that they can just kind of navigate and play the game and not take it too seriously. But I just like
Mm.
I think this desire to make everything legible and quantifiable is at the root of like some of the core issues that like the disconnect that we have between each other and the disconnect with nature, I think is partly driven by this desire to put everything into a spreadsheet and to be able to quantify and to
Mm.
only value the thing that is legible at a very zoomed out scale. You miss all of the beauty, you miss all of the detail. And it's like that's why we're in this mess that we're in. And so I want to go a different path and chart a different path. It's just like, no, no, no. I have a complete fanatical commitment to my values. I just do things in the way that aesthetically feels the most honest. Um, and I just hope and pray that that is enough, that creates enough clarity, um, that there's other people in the world that look at that and they say, yes, this is important. this represents something different. I'm willing to support it. We can get it.
Mm.
But the older I get, the less patient I am, and the more I'm like, oh, I really hope this pays off in the long run because I've certainly been
Mm.
taking a pay cut for all of this time that, I've been going
Yeah.
in this different approach. And at some point, yeah, I want to have the financial security for me and my family, but also I want to have enough funding behind these projects that they're actually not bottlenecked by a lack of capital. They're bottlenecked by more interesting problems than just like, oh, we didn't know how to move the number from this account to that account. Like it's a dumb reason to
Mm.
be bottlenecked.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I also think like this is also why for yeah, essentially for this funding matching project there, why I think it makes so much more sense to go into like existing like essentially the typical philanthropy sector. Because the philanthropy is at least like I'm not entirely sure what's the connotation of this word for other people. But at least for me, it's mostly in this terms of like it's only big institutions. It's like really gigantic foundations which can call themselves philanthropists. And yeah, so this is of course like how it typically is. And then on the other hand, there are essentially many people from the population who donate things to these like foundations or charities or whatever. So essentially that there's this really big gap kind of like on the one hand there's like a large amount of completely ordinary people who genuinely want to do good things and yeah who just like whatever, helping children, for example, and then they give their money to a children helping charity. So this is like, of course, a really, really good thing. And then at the same time, they don't really know where this money ends up. So it's essentially a bit like yeah, like maybe that's a bit too harshly formulated, but like a positive way of paying taxes. So essentially, just paying taxes for your good feeling, pretty much.
Mm,
Where yeah, people pay this money, they think they did something good. Maybe they also did, but in the end, it's really really hard to retrace where just like tax money, where this money actually ends up whether it goes into a playground or whether it goes to buying weapons. Like, not maybe not that, but you get what I mean. So essentially, that there's this really big
mm,
yeah divide, and I think this is also exactly what um, yeah, where it will definitely be quite a challenge, but like to make philanthropy accessible for everyone, because I can imagine that there are many people who are also like from what I've mentioned before of like imagining the rich capitalist with his top hat and then like, just reading the executive summary of like a micro solidarity thing and then saying like we stop the funding because it's not making big numbers. Like I think this is definitely also not realistic. So it's not like all rich people are stupid. Like this is definitely not what I want to imply, but it's quite the opposite of like when people that have because like if people have money, especially if they have money, if they have made money as entrepreneurs, normally they also need to commit their entire life to their business, which
mm,
also means they don't have so much time to look into other things at all. Meaning that it's not even at like in my opinion, it's not at all a lack of willingness. It's really just a lack of knowledge and a lack of connection and a lack of like yeah as mentioned that the knowing that there is anything out there that is worth funding and this is exactly also where I think it will be so like such a boost to all kinds of yeah in that way philanthropic projects to make people like I don't know if like you've also been to Borderlands, so you probably know the Dreams funding process
mhm.
of like people create projects and then everybody who goes to the event just gives like their share of their virtual money to the project they like. And this is exactly the model which I also want to create, but like large scale, to have like a dreams platform, but with hundreds of thousands of projects or so, from like many different places and people. And then you know exactly which kinds of people you are funding. Like if you want to donate something, you give this money to projects that you like. And instead of sort of it being sort of, yeah, in that way, many of these projects, of course, mostly have pretty much like inbound traffic, so that somehow the person already needs to be in the community of this project to even know about this project. Or maybe this project would get like highlighted at the landing page of Kickstarter or so, and then many people know about it. But that, of course, doesn't happen to the broad scale of projects. And this is exactly the thing. Like, if there would be some sort of, and this is exactly what I want to develop. So this kind of matching algorithm between what one party wants to give in any kinds of resources. Money is just one of the resources, and then what another party needs. And then this sort of matching can happen. So in some way, I also called this like philanthropic Tinder. So it's pretty much that, but something which is like there for the well-being of the projects themselves. So
Yeah, it would be lovely if it happened. I guess the question then for me is like where yeah, like what stage are you at with this idea? How close is it to being real, or how far have you got into it? Because I know you've done more than nothing. There's some realness to it.
Yeah, exactly. Like right now,
And what do you need?
it is still very much at the beginning. So the only
Yeah.
thing which is there so far is this kind of entering any kind of project idea and matching that to the German foundation, which matches the best. Which is definitely like there are many, like for example, there are many foundations also in this list which don't even fund projects based on an application. So that like this is something we will need to see, and then the matching itself is also sometimes not so optimal. So it is not an easy task. Like
Mm.
it is sort of on the forefront of sort of the applications of LLMs, and not in the sense of how the rest of the industry does it, of like more efficiency and we need to replace all our employees with AI. And but instead to actually make it useful for decision making and for matching purposes. So yeah, this is currently, as mentioned, we have the prototype, the website also outlined. But the next thing, and this is also where like I'm not entirely sure. Like of course it's also a totally open source project, and it should always stay that way. And now it's pretty much about probably in the very beginning finding more software developers. So I definitely know that I personally also like the project manager role. Like just this of having ideas and then distributing the tasks to different kinds of people. But I personally just don't have enough time to do the really deep coding myself. So
Yeah.
this, and I also don't want this project to just be by myself, because it should be from the community from the very beginning. So yeah, as mentioned, I'm like with a super cool guy from the UK who's also a developer who I will have another call with tomorrow, and who has also worked on scraping some more of the German Foundation pages to essentially also filter out like what kinds of specific projects have they funded in the past, to also make the matching more accurate through that. But overall, like like what I've also already been thinking about, and this is currently where I'm evaluating the best strategy, because I think like there are so many associations and so many foundations and sometimes even government bodies which sort of advocate for AI safety. And I think this is also what I outlined like on the project page on hermesloom.org, that essentially AI has the potential to create how I call it there, the biggest systemic conflicts ever. So essentially, the people that have AI, like the one party that has the best AI, will fight against the other party that also has a super good AI. And so essentially, it's really, really necessary, and it's more necessary than ever before to tackle this by the root. And
Mm,
to not own, like, of course, like some people can definitely use AI to automate their businesses. I think that's very much necessary also. But yeah, that people really use AI for the common good, essentially. And so far, like I've been researching a lot, and to me, this project also seems quite obvious, but I just haven't really found anything similar. And so apparently, this is like a market gap, pretty much. And I also think that like I almost couldn't imagine why sort of the largest associations and institutions and so on that are close to AI safety anyway would not be able to make this connection of like to make AI safe, we don't need to create more laws. We need systemic change of sort of the moral development of people themselves towards more community and all of this stuff like that. So yeah, this is really the stage which I'm in right now of thinking about what might be the best, in my opinion, also that we should start with really quite large scale cooperation partners of like there's no time to lose. And
mm,
this, as mentioned, it is an open source project. It's not like I'm attaching any of this to my ego. I just want this project to be done, and I sort of want to start the flywheel, and then so that cool people can use this, and I can also use this in the end. So yeah, it's mostly in this yeah connection forming phase right now.
yeah, yeah. Um, my brain is just kind of, I'm just getting my head around like the philanthropy side of things, and then the more generalized AI thing. I'm like,
Hmm.
well, in my head, I can easily separate those two things. It's like, decoupled projects, and you've
Hmm.
presented them as like two, like two threads of the same
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
same weave. Are you committed to that connection, or can you imagine these being like separate things that like that for example, if you found a team that was just like all in on the philanthropy side, and that the bigger questions about AI safety were like over their head or something, would
Hmm.
still
Yeah.
that be a satisfying outcome?
Exactly, because like the focus is on the outcome.
Mm,
Like I don't, in the end, I don't really care how we get towards a better world. This is just like the best attempt which I've come up with. Like if
mm,
someone else comes up with a better attempt, and or just if someone else is like sort of approaches essentially the same ideals from a different perspective. That's brilliant. Like we
mm,
need people addressing this problem from so many different sides. It's mostly that the area which I personally can work on is because I just like I've been programming since I was like 11 or so. So the area which I know very well is tech startups.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the biggest boom in tech startups right now is AI and consequently AI safety. So this is really just sort of my approach in this.
mm,
I definitely like I want this to be decoupled very very much, and so it's definitely a really really good point that yeah the philanthropy is the point and addressing this through in that way then also in the beginning possibly funding through people that are somehow because there's so many people that have gotten rich through AI. It's similar to blockchain where it's also like so many people have gotten rich through blockchain, and some of them also do really cool stuff with that money now. And this is kind of what I think AI will also lead to. And this is just personally what, yeah, where I speak the language of tech people and startup people quite well.
yeah,
So yeah, I think I can. This is sort of the approach which I personally find the most suitable for myself.
yeah. um I can imagine in my network of people, especially the Twitter people, that there are developers that I think would, and well, they will understand, and I think they'd be interested in what you're describing. Like there's been some little murmurs in Teapot about uh what would it be like to, because I think Teapot is like micro solidarity, it's like the burners. It's like there's this flourishing innovation and loads of good ideas and people doing it
Mm.
driven by purpose rather than by some egoistic desire, and just aggressively limited by a lack of capital. So I can imagine some people in that network being interested in helping out. Um, but then my mind went to another train of thought, which was, how do you explain AI safety in terms of human moral development? Because that's quite an interesting,
Exactly. So
juxtaposition.
yeah, like I think first of all, AI will create much more competitive companies. So essentially, it starts at that.
Mm,
Like this is also what I'm seeing with my startup already. Of like, for example, there's a tool called Cursor, which is I don't know how much you know about programming. So it's essentially the editor where you write the code. And this editor is like a very other well-known code editor, but it is AI assisted. So you can just have a prompt there and say like, create a page which has an input field there, and when you click that input field, it should do that and that, and then it writes the entire code. It's really really cool in that way. So that yeah, it's just like if companies start using AI, they can massively improve their competitiveness. And this is then, of course, like there are so many people which think about um, what happens sort of when we extrapolate this. So when we start going further and say like yeah, then AI sort of right now it's of course very often compared to like a typical education of like, is AI on an elementary school level, is AI on a college level, is AI on a PhD level, based on like standardized questionnaires. So right now AI is of course very much trained on essentially academic knowledge. This is like the main thing, which is also like I think it a very a very sensible kind of start. And then of course you at some point this is also what like I don't know even if this term really really exists, but I think it should exist of like AI native companies. So essentially thinking of companies that are built on AI from the very start, that don't use like an external email client or so, that don't use like or that maybe use Slack or but all of the data from all sources, from the cloud storage, from the platform itself, from the CRM, from the emails, and all this other stuff would all be fed into one central database. And then it would be indexed from there. Of course, like it would be super, super useful. And then yeah, these companies, of course, like normally, these companies are still owned by, in the typical sense, a small group of people, meaning that these people have a lot of power then, if they have such powerful companies. So then the question is, what do they do with this power? So essentially, when we have like at some point possibly a lot of pretty small companies and they always outcompete each other of like, I have the smarter AI, I can acquire more customers, and then the other says like, I now developed the smarter AI and now I can acquire more customers, and then it sort of will go back and forth. And yeah, because like especially when the AI becomes self-reinforcing, then the
mm,
AI sort of can read AI sort of papers and can improve itself through that. So of course, then the feedback loop will be even more like even faster. And yeah, so essentially this kind of hypothetical somehow general intelligence. But of course, then many people kind of at some point interpret that towards robotics, but robotics is like a totally different challenge. So in the very beginning, it will be that there will be, or this is sort of my hypothesis, this sort of my train of thought. So companies which have a lot of power, but which are still controlled by a very small group of people. So then at some point, yeah, they accumulate a lot of wealth, and possibly then like militaries will also adopt AI. And then, of course, like AI is super, super helpful at first, like, of course, to protect against terrorism and all this sort of stuff. And yeah, it's just super, super convenient. And maybe it keeps people safe. And at some point, like, of course, it's not AI that kills people, it's people that kill people. And then more and more efficient AI will be used to kill people. It's not like maybe the AI has been coded to press on the button, but the one who initiated the coding itself was some sort of person, like some sort of human in power. So this means that in this sort of pretty extreme scenario, um, yeah, we would have like really, really efficient computer systems, which in the end are there to kill other people based on something, like whether it's based on ethnicity, whether it's based on ideology. It's based on we think we're the better people and other people should not live. And like if both parties think that, then it's like deadlock. So and this is like, to be honest, not the world which I want to live in. Like I personally don't want to see a world develop in which militaries start using AI to kill people. Because this will happen. This will happen. People will stay people. So at some point, some military will start using AI. And then even the militaries that say right now, no, we will never use AI to kill people, then they say like, oh, but the bad guys are using AI to kill people, so we need to do it too. Sad. And then we're just downhill from there. So then the question is, of course, like, how can we prevent getting to this point at all? And then, of course, the question is, what even leads people to wanting to drive conflict? Like, what leads people to wanting to create competition? And what leads people to, in the end, wanting to fight against each other, like physically, with physical force, because it's so deeply ingrained in their mind that it's not possible to talk at all. It's completely pointless to talk to this person. I need to kill them. And then, yeah, if we start like many, many stages earlier, many, many stages before this sort of escalation. So we start with a positive point of view. What creates people that don't want to create war? And yeah, I guess in that way, it is comparably clear. Like what creates people that don't want war is people that know that, yeah, essentially peace is possible. It does not mean that immediately world peace is possible, but it means people that are convinced, that have the intention, that have the desire to discuss, that have the desire to resolve conflict amicably, and that essentially have the desire. I called it also on the website, for humanity to become ultimate collaborators instead of ultimate competitors. And yeah, this is then of course something where like I would say, like let's say at the Macro Solidarity event, it's not like people punch each other when they have disagreements, but like, and even if they would, then maybe it's also necessary for them to go through these stages. But in the end, the most important thing is that the people talk about it and that the people want to resolve this. Like whatever conflict happened, that they have a genuine interest and a genuine also like the motivation, but also the belief that it is even possible at all to find resolution. And yeah, because I think that right now, with like so many like opinionated dichotomies that we have. The main thing is that people, it's not the problem is not that people don't talk to each other. The problem is that people don't think that it's worth talking to each other, like even one step earlier. And
Mm.
this is something exactly this, like not wanting to discuss, not because you are an inherently bad person, but because you think that it's not worth discussing with the other person. And I think this is something which so far, of course, is pretty hard to establish because especially across country boundaries, then you have either huge like paramilitary organizations or just sort of normal governments then fighting each other. And then, of course, like people that are in some sort of conflict, they can't really do anything. They have to follow orders. And then it's just sort of the people in power that can't agree. So obviously, we see politicians are not good at making agreements. So I think we need to take this into our own hands. So we need to give this power back to the people of wanting to find agreement.
Mm.
Yeah, that it's not the responsibility of yeah, or it like obviously has turned out like sometimes, of course, like in the EU, we see, for example, it can also work quite well. Like, for example, the entire thing with the Erasmus student exchange, that's brilliant. Of like motivating students and giving students money to go to different countries, because like what better thing makes you feel connected to a culture than having a rave at another country? So it's quite obvious that this works quite well. Of course, it's like only for academia, so it's not perfect, but it's very much the right intention. And then, of course, the thing is, how can we scale this up to more projects? So essentially, this is how I then came to this conclusion of like to create more cohesion in the population at all. You need to have projects at all. You first of all need to have the ideas, but then also the resources to realize these projects for people to actually do good to each other without the initial motivation of competition. So of course, like creating a company and wanting to beat the other companies is an okay thing, but it's not ultimately leading to more peace. In the end, it's still the with the intention of competition. So this is why, of course, like I definitely think that the normal capitalist companies are still very much necessary. About other economic models, this is a whole different discussion. But for the first steps, I think to avoid even more dichotomies, even more conflict, we just need to make people work on things they like. And we just need to make people work with people they like. And yeah, of course, in the most basic sense, it can be like a normal sports team or I don't know, some sort of reading club or so. But unfortunately, it's also the case that many people that are pretty local and they that don't even know that there are like super nice matching people to them out there, that those people also don't really think beyond. And then they read the newspaper all the time and they see all the bad news and they don't even have any hope that things are getting better because they have this, what I mentioned before, learned helplessness. And yeah, I think overcoming this kind of learned helplessness is the best driver towards peace and in the end, then also towards AI safety.
I basically follow, I think. And I
Hmm.
and I
Mhm.
and I think I more or less agree. Um yeah, that this posture of learned helplessness or of sort of I've learned that things are kind of comfortable if I'm powerless. Or
Hmm.
they're tolerable. There's a kind of like a tolerable discomfort maybe,
Yeah.
rather than a comfort. Um that people learn they can put up with this. Yeah, they put up with a situation that they don't love, but it's like, well, I understand what's expected of me and I can live within these terms. And then You are that is yeah, that is the bed for all kinds of fear and mistrust and anxiety to be cultivated. And you can so much of the thing that motivates me, like I think we see this every time we do a micro solidarity event, is you watch people who are not fully. I don't think we are mostly working with people who are like deep into the learned helplessness, but they're more like teetering on the edge. They're
Mm.
like, um, there's a little flicker that says, um, my life should be beautiful, I should be able to contribute to meaningful things, but the flicker is it's not very stable. It's like I'm constantly having doubts, and I'm not sure if it's actually possible. And am I just being idealistic? Is this like an immature belief that I should be able to work on things that are beautiful? And yeah, this idea that I should feel understood, or I should feel like I belong. Like, is this just a naive, fairy tale? People are kind of teetering on the brink when they a lot of the people that come to like a micro solidarity event, and then the thing that's so gratifying is to watch people go from that little flicker to like more of a steady flame. Like, oh, I'm actually getting some conviction that I have power, I have agency, I can shape the world that I'm in. And like you say, once they're working on things they care about, whatever that thing is, like you said, it could be a sports club, could be a musical project, or it could be, yeah, some very high impact digital startup. Doesn't matter. But it's like
Mm.
when they're contributing to something that feels like it matters to them.
Yeah.
It does seem to I don't know, it's like activates some kind of internal growth process. Um, and you're saying that if we have more people doing that, working on stuff they care about, then there'll be more uh they'll have more belief that conflict is worth heading into instead of heading away from, and that like we can find constructive solutions. Is that what you're
Exactly.
saying?
So that then there will be more people who take an active stance against malicious uses of AI.
Mm,
So essentially, yeah, sort of using AI to create these connections, to give back the self-agency to the people, so that they can then use the self-agency to sort of feel powerful against rebelling forces that might be using AI in this malicious way, or any other. Like it's sort of if, yeah, the AI safety is just one aspect. It's really about, yeah, the self agency, which, yeah, can then also be used if the people, especially the people creating the AI, and sort of behind the companies that create the AIs, if they also know about this sort of intention of like, the AI can also be used to connect people. And this is sort of, yeah, what the research can also go into, and regarding all these sort of diverse sets of applications of AI, that, yeah, we just sort of steer something in the right direction there.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I'm wondering, again, it kind of comes back to the side of the conversation. It's that who is in a position to fund uh just general purpose uh agency development. It's like
Mm.
that's the thing that gives me such a so much enthusiasm, is watching someone claim their agency, watching them go from
Mm.
sort of half asleep to being awake and being engaged and productive and like creative. And I'm like, how do I translate that, or who do I talk to get funding to do that work? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is also what I've been noticing, that in many of these, like, of course, also the kind of stuff which I and also you, from what I've seen, are working on, is like really high on the meta level. It's like sort of in some way, like, at least in my opinion, also uncovering some like pretty fundamental truths about humankind, which sort of not everyone is seeing. But sort of trying to formulate that in a way to, yeah, even be able to, yeah, sort of have any kind of impact at all beyond sort of, because I know we're both like pretty yeah, we want to have a big impact in that way. And yeah, this is yeah. Hmm.
I think even like I certainly there was a time where I really felt motivated by having a large impact, and now the motivation has changed slightly. Um, it's not so much about having a big impact, it's more about solving a very interesting problem or something like that, you
Hmm.
know, like doing something that really feels um it's like you know, everyone and there's this I often come back to this metaphor that we kind of we're in an orchestra and everyone has an instrument and your job as a person is to find out what your instrument is and then learn to play it well.
Hmm.
And 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 I feel like I've got a particular instrument which is curious about, yeah, adult development and community building and belonging and group process and stuff like that. And I just want to optimize that thing and make it go really good, you know, like
Hmm. Yeah.
just to be skillful in my execution. And I think a large impact will be a symptom of a very
Hmm. Yeah.
skillful execution.
Hmm.
Um, and it would be nice to have, but it doesn't, to me, it's, yeah. I think what I'm saying is like if I helped 100 people have some kind of significant impact in their life, that's just as satisfying as like a million people in some way, you know, like if it
Hmm.
um yeah, it doesn't have to be a huge numbers game for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is also why, in some way, I also like with this project name, like using the loom as the metaphor, like to
Yeah,
really use or yeah, to create this association with the tool itself.
yeah,
So that when you are
yeah,
using the tool, it is just a tool for something else, and sort of creating the tool means sort of working on the process. So essentially, you create the tool for other people to go through this process.
yeah,
So yeah, it's I also think it's super fulfilling to yeah, create tools which then other people can use in their own life, like even when you're not there or
yeah.
without
I
your
mean, I've been through
guidance.
exactly that same process, and the our first startup was called Lumio, but for
Ah,
the
okay.
reason, for the same reason as
Oh yeah,
Hermes
exactly.
Loom,
I
like
read the business plan. Yeah.
because it's about weaving. So
Hmm.
and yeah, we built
Nice.
it because we wanted, you know, I had this vision of like, well, I got to observe how different kinds of ways of organizing can lead to different outcomes, right? Like that
Hmm.
your how affects your what. And I had this impulse of like, oh, we could actually optimize the how. We could find ways of making decisions that just bias more towards collective intelligence. More, you know, some processes are going to be more intelligent than others,
Hmm.
basically. And that if we could use that, if we could design a process that's just a little bit better than average, and then we use that to then make decisions about how to improve the process, like that we
Hmm.
would have this self-reinforcing system. Like that was the whole um that insight is what gave me so much motivation at the start of Lumia.
I
It was
love
just like, oh
that.
my
Yeah.
goodness, like we get this like compounding feedback loop. And so we built a platform for the team to use, and the team was like building the platform. So yeah, I
Yeah.
recognize that. I recognize that impulse that you have. Um I have I have one more question. I'm looking at the time and I don't want to stay on too late, so I can have a break before my next meeting. But I did want to hear from you briefly about how all of this connects with Polis, because Polis is like Lumio's cousin, you know, it's like
Hmm.
yeah, we've been growing up at the same time. We're good friends with people on the team and we've been to lots of conferences together and stuff like that. And I've always had the sense that there's something in the Polis algorithm about looking at a vast, diverse population group and uncovering what we have in common. Like that just
Hmm.
it's just so obviously a useful thing and it's so well done.
Hmm.
And it's always felt to me like underutilized somehow. Like it's like the promise never quite matched the reality of how it's been used. And I don't think that's Polis's problem. I think there's something in the world that's like missing out on this amazing thing. Um, So I'm always interested every time when I find someone else who knows about polis, I'm like, oh. So
Mm.
how does that fit in with all of this
Yeah.
massive tapestry that you're weaving?
Mm. Exactly. So I think like first of all, of course, when you have bigger projects going on, especially when there are more people involved in any kind of project, and especially when money is involved, then of course there will be, first of all, decisions to be made. Not even necessarily that there would be conflict coming up, but there will always be decisions to be made. And yeah, of course, there are always different kinds of models, like either this kind of typical thing of like there's only one small leading group and it makes all the decision proposals. But of course, the relevant thing is then of course for the things like over what needs to be decided at all, that also comes from the community, or
Yeah.
from the people that have some sort of interest in something.
Yeah.
So then, of course, this kind of connection to polis is, of course, relevant, just like you described with Lumio, also for this Hermes Loom platform itself. Because there will be so many different kinds of stakeholders, so many different kinds of organizations with all different kinds of backgrounds, that will need different approaches to be implemented technically. And then yeah, it's of course the question like what should we focus on
Mm.
during the development, so that first of all that becomes more feasible to do the project management itself in a genuinely democratic way. And then, of course, also thinking beyond that. So let's say at some point we would organize larger events. Like for example, like I'm also in the board of Borderland, and yeah, there I'm seeing like at Borderland there's this concept called advice processes. So yeah, essentially, yeah, you know, people in a forum making posts, and then people discussing this. So that of course works okay in a way, but there are also certain things where yeah the opinion making itself yeah sometimes is very fragmented still. So there's some discussions happening on Facebook and then some in the advice processes, and yeah, certain decisions which in my opinion would make sense for everybody to have like and of course like I know like one centralized platform often means just one more platform among the diversity of platforms, but yeah, just from the concept itself, like as soon as something becomes big, you need decision structures.
Yeah.
And you need decision structures that work well. And yeah, so far I haven't, like mostly I've gotten this input through Nikki. Um, and he also told me about Polis. And yeah, I think like just intuitively it makes sense because like of course in the end I'm not like sort of completely forcing any kind of growth or so. But I think that these kinds of structures, especially with the yeah with this philanthropic funding matching, that can become really popular. And then of course the user base will also be quite large. And instead of having like super slow committees or like yeah other like because normally these associations or these kinds of organizations at some point the larger they get the slower they get, and yeah, to not get into this kind of hassle from the very beginning, to essentially design the entire organization or the entire decision-making structure from the very beginning with this in mind,
Mm.
that we see that these are the some of the main things which bring projects to fall. Like the one thing which makes really like amazing projects fail is lack of money. But even when there's no lack of money, then the other thing is yeah, lack of agreement and some sort of fundamental differences between the people, which then also makes the project fail. So and yeah, so then of course going along with this intention of yeah, getting beyond the learned helplessness also means empowering people to solve conflict. First of all, like giving them possibly also through a potential future version of Polis, like inspiration on how to solve like directly interpersonal conflict, and yeah, then also to do the same in a more like democracy oriented way for bigger groups. And
Mm.
yeah, I think that this is also like in the very, very long term, how the political system itself could very much benefit from that. Like if you wouldn't have one party which says like in the beginning, like when it wants to be voted, that it makes all these promises, and then the party is like in power, but maybe over time the like the needs of the population totally change, and then the party might want to do something different, but it can't. To instead, yeah, think about parties which always let their members make their decisions with like some sort of super easily accessible device, whether it would be an app or just like a hotline you would call and then it would do text to speech. Like it could also be accessible for old people and so on. So
Mm. Mm.
that yeah, I think to create this large scale possibility, like to even allow sort of yeah, essentially agreement across large groups of people, it is necessary to design such a system with conflict resolution in the mind from the beginning. And so far, I've heard of Polis, and it seems awesome. Like I haven't used it myself yet, but the idea is exactly in that regard.
The probably the most popular implementation that people will have seen is the community notes feature on Twitter. Do you know about community
Hmm.
notes?
I've heard about it, but I'm not using Twitter at all.
Right.
So
Right.
um,
Well, community notes is kind of mind-blowing because it's
hmm,
like, um, trying to solve this very difficult problem of what do you do about disinformation on the internet? Um, and basically the way it works is on any post on Twitter, including all of the ads, any post, any user can see it and they can flag it and say, I'd like a community note on this. I'd like this to be annotated. I'd like the other people to take a look at this. And when it reaches a certain number of flags, then it goes onto the agenda to be discussed. And
hmm,
to be the community notes group is like this massive user population. You have to kind of be accredited to become a noter. And then yeah, they're basically running the same algorithm as Polis, where it's like, oh, Donald Trump said this and this and this, and then everyone said, no, that's not true. And then you have this very diverse user group that is debating and throwing statements out and trying to find what's the most agreeable statement.
hmm,
And so you very rapidly find all on all kinds of different content on Twitter now. There's like a little note underneath that said, the community thought it was useful that you should know this statement. And the
hmm,
statement's very
hmm,
high quality, even when it's a very, contentious political issue. There's really high quality statements coming out
hmm,
um, that actually are adding to the quality of the discourse. Um, and that's, yeah, it's just really cool to see. That's the first time I've seen a like actual mass deployment of the Polis concept. And it's sort of every day, people wouldn't even know that that's what's going on in the background, but it's just like
hmm,
constantly you see. Even, I mean, my favorite use of community notes is on the ads. It's so often on an ad, there'll be a community note underneath here, which is just like, this is not true. We've got all this evidence. Here's a really good citation about why it's fake, or things they said.
hmm,
It's like, wow,
hmm.
it's genius. So that,
Yeah.
yeah, with hundreds of millions of users on Twitter, it's actually impressive to see something like that actually working, and it gives me a little inspiration about, well, we could put that on more consequential things and not just like someone tweeting some nonsense, but actually,
Hmm,
yeah, like you're saying about laws and about like adjudicating really powerful decisions.
hmm, yeah. Hmm.
I'd like to wrap it up there so I can have a break.
Hmm.
Um, if you're not on Twitter, how then should people get in touch with you if they're excited about your ideas and want to collaborate?
Yeah, I would say It would be Julian, like just via email. So I don't know if I can write that somehow. Like Julian at henophilia.org, HENOPHILIA.org.
Cool. And I'll make sure that's included anywhere we share the video in text so people can click on it. That's
Nice.
awesome. It's really nice to talk to someone where I feel aligned in values and you're working on the technology side of things because I feel like um I've been in this sort of ecosystem of values for a very long time and I have kind of left the technology questions behind, you know, it's like my interest moved on to other things and it's just nice to be like, all right, there's new people coming through that I really it's solving things that feel really important to me. And if any of these if you can make headway on any of these ideas, I think the world's going to be a lot better off for it. So it's really inspiring.
Nice. Thank you.
I'm gonna stop recording and say goodbye to any phantom audience out there.
Mm. To all the phantoms. Goodbye.
Goodbye.